Welcome to Beyond the Frontline podcast, where your hosts, U.S. Air Force veterans Donna Hoffmeyer and Jay Johnson, will help you transition from the front line to the home front. Listen every other Wednesday as they will bring great conversations, resources, tips, and feel-good stories that will resonate and relate. Now, here's your hosts, Donna Hoffmeyer and Jay Johnson.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Frontline. I am your co-host, Donna Hoffmeyer, and I am here with, I call him my brother from another mother, very good friend, frequent mentor and venting person that listens to me.
We just had an hour of that.
Actually. We did. But this is the one and only right next to me, Jay Johnson.
Hey, Donna, it's good to see you, everybody. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, it's funny you didn't say cellmate that time, which
that's next time.
Oh, that's next time. Yeah.
Oh, actually, that's funny. We punned right into our next thing. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I thought that was a very subdued step in you just did, though, right? Like you and I have just literally had an hour conversation just about life and things we're involved in and things that we have familiarity with, and energy's up, and then right, let's record the podcast, and you just kind of slowly stepped into that, this calming presence and voice. That was good, Donna. That was good.
Once in a while, I keep myself sorted out. I know. I like it when you do the intros because you have that robust speaker voice, and mine is not. And it's a little more, I don't know what the word is. My perception is it's a little more tinny and a little more not as full. I have a skinny voice compared to your robust voice.
I don't find that to be true. I do think that when we hear our own voice, any one of us, we hear it very differently than how other people hear and receive it, right? So
it's taken me a long time to get used to
it. You're good at this and what we do, and it's pleasing and easy to listen to. Neither one of us, I pray, sound like Mickey Mouse. I've got a little bit of a sinus thing going on, so I probably sound maybe even more resonant today.
Let me quantify what he says a little bit. Yeah. He tells me before the podcast starts, hey, I got this little sinus thing and my teeth are hurting.
Yeah.
Nurse over here. I'm like, yeah, that probably means urgent care because that's not a good sign.
It's all good. I'm still in the fight. I feel okay otherwise.
You do.
I was at a chamber event. I saw you this morning at a veterans breakfast.
We've seen each other more now than we have in months.
I know that's true. Yeah, over the last few weeks, we've seen each other a lot more, just starting to get some things cleaned up on our schedules. But so we were at a veterans breakfast this morning. You did an amazing job leading that. And then I rushed out of there to go to a Chamber of Commerce ribbon cutting event. And it was a beauty supply company. And I'm on beauty supplies? Yeah, I'm on their board of directors. So I had a speaking part at this ribbon cutting. And the very first thing I did when I stood up was kind of, circle my hand in front of my face and said, I'm glad that y'all are here because anything you can do for this is needed, and I have a face for radio, so I'm hoping they can they can fix this and maybe I can be seen someday. We talk about that though, don't we?
What?
Well, Cindy, our executive director at Coming Home Well, has asked you on
a couple
occasions, whether or not you and I are ready to be seen on video.
He gets met with the same answer, a laugh and no, like that. And that's just, honestly, I'll tell you part of the reason why I don't want to do it. Here's the truth, Cindy, you're going to hear it. I move too much. And I was interviewed on a podcast, a visual podcast for one of my books, right?
Yeah.
And then I forgot about it. Like I was so busy that I did it and I'm off and running. And then like a couple weeks later, the gentleman says, Donna, here's the podcast. And I went, oh yeah, right. And I click it and I look at it. And here's this guy that's very professional. He's sitting there. We're having a great conversation. And it's hard to listen when you're watching me move all over the screen, right?
Well, in fairness, that would be me too.
Right. And I'm French. That's my background. And I talk with my hands.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So there it is, Cindy. That is why we cannot be a visual podcast.
Not that I'm advocating. Yeah. Not that I'm advocating for this, but maybe that's what would help us kind of knock it down a little bit. We do enough of them and all of a sudden we learn to sit on our hands, right? Like a $100,000 pyramid. And
I'm going to have to. But the thing the skills that we need to build. So
all I did was leave the door open there, Cindy. And again, to our listeners, Cindy is our executive director at Coming Home Well. She's the one that puts all these things, cleans them up for us.
She's amazing.
Yeah, she's incredible. The whole team is.
Yes. So yes, and she's very kind to us. When I say no, she's just like, okay, like that. And I know, and maybe we'll get there someday, but not today. So anyway, what else is going on? Anything? Maybe?
No, it's busy. We try not to, because you and I, we've said this to our listeners, we record these sessions. We try to be well in front of their release dates, meaning we've usually got some of these queued, and then they get released every, 2 weeks. And we try not to date stamp any of this, right? But sometimes it's not easy just because we're updating our lives. And but locally in the San Antonio area, it's rodeo times, which means concerts, and I don't know. I love going to the rodeo. Mutton busting is fun when they put the little kids on the back of sheep to see who can hang on the longest, and who doesn't like bull riding, right? I mean, you go to watch these big massive animals, toss people around like rag dolls. So
pet bull as a kid, so it's not
boy,
it doesn't enamor me, but
here we go.
No, that's
I learned more. I believe you. I just keep learning more and more. How did 4 years or however long we've been friends now, and the first time I've heard the bull story.
My grandfather had a dairy farm,
okay.
And they always have a bull, right?
Yeah.
And so they can't keep. It was a small dairy farm, so they couldn't keep more than one bull, obviously. And so when there is a male bull born, they will keep them for up to the year, and then they become dinner. Right?
Oh,
yeah. So
I'm very appreciative.
Yes. Yeah. And so I had Blackie, my bull, that I did not know was going to become dinner. I was only probably 5 or 6 years old. And I would brush him and I would walk him. They let me walk a baby bull. Oh yeah, I'm up and down the farm. I'd walk him and brush him and wash him. He was my pet. And then he became our dinner.
So you're still carrying him around today is kind of what I hear.
In spirit.
Right? Oh, in spirit. I thought maybe, you ate some of Blackie as if they put a steak on your plate one night, and so he's a part of you. It made me think of City Slickers. Do you remember the old movie with Billy Crystal and Jack Palance? And Billy Crystal had to help a cow give birth, and the cow, he named it Norman, hello. That was his, it's funny. Yes. So I hear you saying that, and could see you walking this bull around, So
yes, I was a farm girl, so
that's fun.
I've been to a lot of those stock and rodeo.
Oh, that's fun. It's not experience I have other than as a spectator.
Yeah. Well, I think we should roll into
probably. Yeah, they're probably like, okay, there's enough.
Enough of your life. We don't care. What are you talking about today? We're kind of wrapping up, right? So we just did this whole series on resiliency and talked to some pretty incredible people.
Amazing people.
Let me tell you, it's really hard to poo-poo any part of your life when you talk to Matt Cable, who overcame leukemia twice.
Yeah. What an incredible spirit he has too.
God, I mean, amazing. And Matt was such an anomaly, right? Not only is he the size of a house, and I mean muscle size of a house, he's huge. He got ventilated twice. He got diagnosed twice with leukemia.
And he's like a temple of health today. And when you look at him.
And he's always been healthy, right? So people are just like, I eat healthy, I eat all this. Well, he did too. And he really kept good care of himself. And boom, he genetic predisposition for leukemia, right?
Sure.
So, he overcomes that. And then remember, I didn't tell you the end of it. You got to hear it. The big surprise was that here is this gentleman that has, at a very young age, overcome cancer twice and near death twice. One time he actually had a brain fungus. We thought he was done, and he overcame all that. And then recovers. He's now in remission a second time. And guess what? Meets the love of his life.
That's fun.
Gets married. And I'll be damned, they have now a year-old baby.
I love it.
That was done the old-fashioned way, and really all odds by what happened to him said.
Stacked against him.
Yeah, shouldn't have been having babies, right?
Never say never, right? I try to avoid absolutes for that reason.
And if it's not enough for resiliency, his wife overcame breast cancer.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, double whammy, right? And yet here they are with a beautiful 1-year-old baby.
Yeah, incredible spirits, love and zeal for life, overcomers for sure, and have an incredible story.
Yeah, and just the nicest person.
And that was the intent, wasn't it, Donna? When you were the one that tabled this notion up of let's do this series on, and I think you're right. You kind of alluded to this. It's tough to kind of wallow in your own despair or the challenges that we all face on a daily basis. It's tough to stay there when you hear some of these other really incredible stories of people who have endured way more than maybe what we have. There may be some listeners that have been through some really, really trying things too, but generally when you hear someone else's story, it just kind of gives you a chance to step back and go, wow, that's inspiring, and I'm okay.
Yep. And you are, you do that check, and because sometimes like you feel off, like I have days where I feel off.
Yeah, me too.
And then I'll look at my husband and go, okay, the kids are healthy, you're healthy, I'm healthy. Why am I
an attitude of gratitude?
Yeah, right. And like, why do I feel like this? There's nothing going bad in our lives. But sometimes it's just the energy around you. Like sometimes it'll be like 4 of my friends are having issues, and you want to be support for them, and sometimes you don't realize that you're actually embodying some of that energy, and I have to be careful that I'm guilty. I'm a nurse, and by trade we love to embody everybody's energy. We're going to fix you all, and I've had to learn how to set that boundary, and that doesn't mean I don't support them and I don't help them. I just have to learn how to, okay, I'm there for you, but I can't take on that energy.
Yeah, it's kind of like where I'm at right now. We get seasonal kinds of ailments, so I have a cold, and I try not to ever make a big deal about it, even if I don't, necessarily feel great. I certainly am never going to say to someone like you or my significant other, Sherry, or somebody, complain about a cold when here you got a woman that gives birth to an 8 or 10 pound bowling ball.
Ask my family.
I'm not going there. I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. It's a cold. I'm good. I'm not complaining.
When it's like when they get a cold, and like with a nurse mom, Lord, your leg better be falling off.
Yeah.
I mean,
you better get up out of that bed.
I know.
Nobody's waiting on you.
We do the whole thing, like get up and get moving, and then see how you feel.
Yeah.
Fortunately, my kids aren't much of fakers. When they're sick, they're usually sick. Yeah. So, but yes, Brian's like, there's no love.
Yeah.
It's like,
no
go
love.
to bed, and I'll bring you some tea.
Yeah. Well, as a man, I'm not going to speak for any other men listeners. I'm just going to own that there's nothing wrong with being babied once in a while. So if a cold, flu, something allows me to be spoiled a little bit, I'm okay with it.
It's a thing, because my dad, let me assure you, my dad was the funniest. My dad's a woodsman.
Yeah.
My dad runs skitters. He's a Christmas tree farmer. He grew up on a dairy farm. I mean, hard labor, right? Work. He was hauling trees out with horses when at 5 years old.
Yeah.
The man worked, right? Give him a cold. Oh my God. He's on the bed. I think I have cancer.
It's most men. It's most men, just to be fair. Some of you right now are like, Jay, shut up. Don't give it away.
So, but it is a whole mindset of, resiliency is really this mindset. And we went into Jeff Caroon.
Yeah, that was unexpected for me. You knew Jeff. Completely, because you were still doing what you were doing in
the military,
in case and care management, and that's how you met him. But completely unexpected to hear something like that, something as innocuous as
I tripped and
fell, broke my foot, or did these things to my foot, and this is where it led.
So here's this guy that just trips and falls, and then now he's a double amputee of 2 feet, bilateral amputee, right? I mean, and
any of you who just tripped and fell, stay in the positive. This is not the norm, right? We don't want you to freak out over.
It was just it was like happenstance,
It's just
Swiss cheese effect, whatever you want to call it, But we saw him, and I remember you were like, God, you're so happy, and you're smiling, and and good things were coming. He was just finishing the end of his medical board, and he was going to be out very soon.
Right.
And he lives here in San Antonio. He's come up to some of our events, and
it's beautiful.
and met his wife, and just great people, super positive. The future looks bright for
Well,
them.
I think that's law of attraction. We probably talked, or law of magnetism, I think is not attraction, but let's say law of magnetism, that what we put out is what we attract, right?
Yep.
So if we try as best we can, it's not that you said, look, I have days I feel off. That's what you said a while ago. Me too. But if we try to channel the good, look for the good, keep a positive, optimistic, hopeful demeanor about ourselves, we're likely to attract more. That you ever had somebody, Donna, say something to you like, this always happens to me, or things are always just going wrong for me, and it's because I think they stay channeled there, and they kind of draw more of it to them.
Well, we talked about this like I can say way back now, because we've been doing this.
We're veterans. We're veterans. Podcast veterans.
Podcast veterans, right? So when we first started this, we did a little mini series on the brain and neuroscience and neurofeedback. And remember, we brought up Raz, right?
Yeah.
Articulating.
We had our friend Alan Novian come in.
Dr. Alan Novian came on and did a phenomenal podcast on neurofeedback and the brain, and it was just amazing. And that's one thing we talked about, right? The reticular activating system, the RAS.
That's right.
And so, the way we explain that is so simple is, you want to buy, I'll say a red Jeep because I own a red Jeep, but you buy a red Jeep and you're like, I think I want a red Jeep. That's what I'm thinking about. And you buy it and you think, I've got the red Jeep. I'm going to be unique.
You're thinking, I always see black, I always see white, I always see olive green. I don't ever see red.
I'm going to get a red one.
And then you get a red one.
And then guess what? You know how many red Jeeps I see? I see a lot of red Jeeps. As a matter of fact, somebody parked next to me up at the library and said, oh, red Jeep. She's like, you're part of the red Jeep club. I'm like, you got it. So the whole point is that your mind is now saying, oh, you're looking for a red Jeep. So if you're putting, I'm looking for the good, you're going to start looking for the good. Like, for example, when I wrote my second book, I wrote it to make people laugh. That is why I wrote it. What I didn't know, and it really didn't even hit
parodies. Me. Pandemic parodies.
What I didn't know is that I didn't know this till well after the fact, like till after the book was out, that as I was writing these they were Facebook posts. This wasn't even a book at the time. It was just Facebook posts. But as I was writing
levity during a tough time in
I was just trying to make people laugh. So because I was trying to make people laugh, guess what I was doing at home? I was trying to find the funny in everything. So I had something funny to write about on my post, because my goal was make people laugh and use my family because they're funny, right? And you know them because they can be a hoot sometimes.
They're a hoot.
And so I started doing that. And then afterwards, people were like, oh my God, I laughed. It was so funny. And then I went, I was looking for the good. And so my perception during COVID really wasn't a bad one.
Yeah.
Why? Because were things happening? Oh my God. Every other day things were happening. But I was looking at it as humor versus tragedy.
Yeah. The world's ending. The sky's falling. Oh my God.
Yeah. I knew it was going to get better at some point.
Yeah.
So that's how I looked at it. So I think that's what I see in Jeff, right? Is that he is putting the good forward. And, yes, he now has a double amputee and
big smile, energy I could feel. Yeah. Energy I could feel through the video that we were watching when we record these. We know we haven't done that, released that part to our listeners, but no, it's true. Just a good human being.
Yep. And then, that personality just shined through. And then we brought on the biggest personality. Yeah,
Patrick.
Woo!
I assume that's who you're talking about. It's got to be Patrick. His episode is fun, but that's Patrick's, demeanor. We knew stepping into that time and space, a really gregarious man with a good heart.
But and I think all of them choose this, right? They choose this positive.
Yeah.
And Patrick himself is a huge personality. I mean, when he comes into a room, everybody knows he's there, and he laughs like Santa Claus. I mean, he has a very robust.
It is.
But if you really know all his story, and if you want to know it, go listen to the podcast. But if you want to understand where he came from, it makes you understand that robust personality, because he is choosing to look at the positive, because he knows what the negative is like, and it's not fun. So let's do it another way, right? Let's do a choice. And
wheelchair bound, still out competing, in martial arts competitions, and winning medals in those competitions.
In London,
in a heck of a grip, right? When you shake his hand, just
yes, absolutely. It always has a positive thing to say. I mean, when we met him at the we donated him a hand recumbent bike, and when we were there, the first thing I was noticing is, as he was talking to people, he would say, like Christy, somebody we know, he's like, God, you have beautiful hair, and you just watch the people, how they respond, and so positive, right? So he was definitely a force, a good force, to have him on. And then we brought on your friend Ginger. And that was a force in a whole other way.
She's such an amazing force. Yeah, she's such an amazing lady. Hers was the story of her late husband Troy, F-16 Viper pilot, refused to leave some Army Special Forces that were surrounded, pinned down by Taliban fighters, and unfortunately lost his life, and then had his body taken as a war trophy.
And I can tell you, I said this to you before we started the podcast, was it's hard to have me be quiet. I have a comment for almost everything. Ask Jay. And at that podcast, I remember I just sat there because I had not heard the entire story. So it was all new to me.
Right.
And I had to take a minute and process all that, and actually minimally process it so we could just finish out the podcast. But it really hit me hard. I was like, wow.
Well, I got my eyes sweated, I think, a couple times.
And you knew the story.
And I've heard it, and I knew Troy personally. He was a friend, as Ginger is, and and then she was left with kids to raise on her own.
She had her children to raise, and you know what, she didn't deny the struggle. Obviously it was a huge struggle. She recognized that it did take a village to help her through. And she made a choice, and she chooses to focus on spouses that have lost their service member, their spouse, their partner. And she focuses very specific on them, and she gives them love and recognition and validation and support and all that stuff. So she's doing great things in that dependent community.
She is. And you and I know several others in that arena that we didn't get in on this series, that for the future, we feel pretty confident we're going to close some of the loops on that. Even to the point, Donna, we've talked about maybe, bringing in their advocates in the Wounded Warrior program and how they work with them through all of that, right? So I think all of that's good.
So I think it's interesting how this kind of laid itself out, right? So this was all about resiliency and making the choice, right? You really have to make this choice to move forward, and it is. And some days it is a choice, right? Like I really have to force myself.
Get out of bed. Anymore.
I've had those days.
I don't want to talk to people.
I don't want to. I don't. We met somebody today at the chamber.
We did.
And or at the veteran breakfast, and that I could tell by her energy, she was making a choice to get out there.
True.
It was a huge amount of energy, but she was making the choice. And when she left, she was very thankful. She came up and was like, "Thank you so much." And I think it gave her a little bit of light to go, I'm going to try this again. I might join the chamber. I might do this, just to get out there. But I could tell, she was so kind, but I could tell how much energy that
took. Don't you think that's good, Donna? As a premise, there's a lot of things that people can pour energy into. We talked about some of them. What did you do? How did you do? But not walling ourselves off, staying in some kind of community. You get to determine the size of that, but I think it really does help us to have people that we can sit and just be authentically us with, whether we're just sitting in silence together or whether there's dialogue back and forth. I think it's so helpful. We talked to one individual that grew up in a very abusive kind of home. Do you remember that?
James Eastland.
It was James
Eastland. That's right. James was another part of our series, and again, just a shining light. My gosh, he's amazing.
The things he's doing in the community today are beautiful.
And again, he had a choice, and he is a very he's a good transition piece, right?
Yeah.
James grew up in a very abusive upbringing in childhood, and he had people that put arms around him and his brother.
Yep.
And he made the choice to follow that and listen to it. And the way it worked for him was to become part of that community. They brought him into their church, and he chose to go this path, and it worked for him. And his life is just beaming, right? Yeah. He's doing great. His brother didn't make that choice. Yeah, his brother,
different choices.
Yeah, he made a different choice to not embrace that. And the outcome is his brother's in jail right now. And he didn't say this on the podcast. And honestly, because both of us kind of forgot about it. But the reason why his brother is going to jail is because he got into drugs. Yeah. And you make some really crazy choices when you are desperate to get drugs. Yeah. And ended up murdering their grandmother. Yeah. So I say this, not to be a downer, but it transitions us into the next series, yeah. Right? So what happens, when we are so down and out and we start making questionable choices, right? Right. Sometimes those choices lead to very severe, like James's brother, and going to jail for a long time for murder, or they're making choices that are getting them in the trouble with the legal right. system, but recoverable. Right. And that's what our next series is going to be about.
It's really good. Yeah, it's really good. We've recorded a few of them already. They'll get to hear those soon as they start to roll out. It's eye-opening.
And this next series is, I got to tell you the backstory to it. And the series is Veteran Treatment Court. The backstory to it, more serendipity, right? An author reached out to me, said he was marketing his book. We ended up connecting, and he lived in the San Antonio area. And so we start talking, and I find out, he didn't live too far away. I invited him to our veteran breakfast. We meet, we have big discussion, and I find out he works I guess I would call a case manager for the Veteran Treatment right. Court. And I said, what is that? It was all new to me. And then I was very intrigued. And so almost every county in the U.S. has them. Every state has a Veteran Treatment Court, but usually they're done by the county.
That's the thing that really shocked me. One, how did I not know? And then two, wait a minute. Not only did I not know, but it's so widely dispersed. It's everywhere.
It originally started, if I'm not mistaken, you can check the date, but I think it's 2008 when Veteran Treatment Court started. And the one up in Comal County started in 2015. Right. And so I learned about this, and I was like, well, this is crazy. And so in a good way, the whole premise is that a veteran makes a bad choice. So just keep it simple and say they drink and drive. Yeah. And now they're going to have a record, and now it's going to hinder them, getting a job as in the civilian world, trying to go forward. The courts recognized, hey, you know what? These guys and girls have served honorably, and they have seen things and had things happen to them that nobody should see or have happened to right. them. And they're struggling, and they see these mistakes as this struggle. And so what they do is they tell them, if you plead guilty, then we put you into special court, and it's the Veteran Treatment Court. If you complete the 18 months, that's what it's roughly on, then we can either, every court's a little different, but expunge the record or mask the record or whatever. So I was just absolutely blown away by this. And I just started finding out more and more. And now we're in a situation where our veteran committee in Bulverde is now connecting with the county's Veteran Treatment Court. Right. And we're looking at making things more robust for veterans in general. And Judge Stevens, who you guys are going to hear in part of our series.
He's such an amazing man.
Yeah. His theory is like, hey, if we can get awareness and get resources out there better, then I'll see less of these people in my court. Right. That's the ultimate goal. So that's what the series is going to be.
It's a good one. Yeah. It's a good series. I'm excited for everybody to hear it. It made me think just listening to you, though. I'm going to date myself here. start thinking of the original Rambo movie. And, Sylvester Stallone's just returning home, walking down along the side of the road, and a sheriff pulls over and engages him, and it escalates, it's out of control real quick. But he was suffering from, right? He's a Vietnam vet.
Yeah.
And then he's suffering from PTSD and some other things, and how things just spiraled out of control because we veterans have, by and large, more so than, our civilian counterparts seen and done things that other people hopefully never have to see.
We had to develop skills to allow us to survive in austere conditions.
That's
right?
Yeah.
These are, people are like, oh, these are the symptoms. I'm like, well, they're actually the skills. The problem is that when we're back in a safe space, we don't need those skills. We don't need to be hyper vigilant. We don't need to do that. And then the other part of it is that if they're not able to process everything that did happen, and then they have all these extra skills that they can't use, right? They don't need to use on top of the trauma that's not healed. And then you're starting to deal with flashbacks, and you're going back to your survival mode, and it just goes out of control, right? So
that's true.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, it's a good series.
We've already started recording the series, and we'll be sharing that in a couple weeks.
What's interesting to me now, just kind of reflecting on what you and I have brought forward. We, to our listeners, I think you've heard Donna and I say this before. We don't pre-script questions or anything from guests we bring on. We don't do that for ourselves. We have a theme we want to step into this space and have a conversation on, but we really do try to keep it, as you say, this coffee talk.
Yeah,
we want it to be organic and natural, and hopefully that comes through to the listeners. But I'm here thinking about what we've just done in this episode. We revisited, here's the series we're kind of wrapping up. We've been talking about resiliency, and here's where we're going. And I think what I love about every bit of that is we're kind of steering listeners who may be new to us back to some previous episodes.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're stirring or creating interest for those that have been with us to have a little bit of excitement, looking forward to hear about this thing called Veterans Court. I don't know. I think we've done a good job of just kind of teasing past episodes and teasing future ones. So unintentional. And
we're still going strong. It's impressive. So we're very excited. And we hope you guys are enjoying this. We really hope that this causes a lot of food for thought, a lot of curiosity. We want people to engage. I mean, please feel free. We will respond. Even if it's just a thought or a perspective, or hey,
I listened.
I listened. Or hey, have you ever thought of doing this? I mean,
that right there. Yeah, that right there. I would love to have our listeners say, you know what I would like to hear about.
Yeah,
because I feel pretty confident saying this. Between you and I, there's probably nothing that we couldn't cover. That we could go find the resource, the people, the right subject matter to cover that topic. I really believe that. So I would love our listeners to say, hey, here's something that I would love for you to consider. Now, when we get that sequenced in, might take a little bit of time. But so listen, look, if you're listening to this, you have a thought, you've been following us and listening, and there's something on your heart, drop that to us.
Yeah, because we want to hear. We really, truly, honestly do. We love people, and we love to engage. And like we said, this is all for you guys. So share, whatever you need to do. Reach out to us. Email us. We respond.
Is it fair? Is it fair? Fair or not, I'm going to say it. So Donna and I do this as volunteers. We do this because we just want to serve. We want to make aware, share knowledge, give people insights and steer them to resources that can benefit them. I think our intro talks about, even feel good stories. And we've certainly tried to do that over the past year plus that we've had the pleasure of being in this space with listeners. So I don't know. I think it's fun, Don. I hope they're getting something from it. We're doing it because we have a heart for this community. And you've pointed out, it's not just veterans, right? it may have a veteran bent to it, but there's so much you and I've covered over our episodes over the last year plus that are really applicable to anyone.
Yeah, I mean, you listen to the Resiliency series, and yes, they're all veterans because we're veteran focused, but all of those principles can be applied to anybody's life.
Sure.
I mean, there are many people that have never joined the military that are overcoming some big obstacles, and so.
Well, we've talked about entrepreneurism,
yeah,
right? That was in the past. We've talked about what networking looks like. We've resumes. We've had a federal resume expert come on and share some insights. So yeah, it's for everybody.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. Is like we want everybody to take something away from it. We just gear it. We can talk in the military lingo, but we do try to explain if we start acronyming too much. Where we're going. But it's just our world. This is what we're used to. But I said it can apply.
If a corporate sponsor wants to come on and say, "Hey, Donna and Jay, we're going to get behind this with you all."
That's not.
I just weight on my heart. I'm being silly, right? But anyway, the bottom line is we love service.
Cindy would be totally.
I'm sure she would be good with it. Yeah, she would be good with it.
Right, I have to do a shout out to Cindy.
Yeah.
Because one of the series, and I'm going to razz her a little bit, one of the series that we want to do is maybe some, in the future, is maybe some cross podcasting, meaning that Coming Home Well is a whole network of podcasts. Yeah. There's, 6, 7, 8, I don't know how many, that's always building. And I thought it would be fun to talk about how somebody else's podcast started, why they started, and what they're doing and where they're going. But I told her, I said, when we start this, it has to start from the top down. I just want everybody to know top down is doing this volunteer. So our executive director, Cindy, does this volunteer also. And Cindy, you cannot edit this out. And so from the top down, and I said, we need to start with you. And her reaction was like mine to the YouTube thing. Yeah, no. I'm like, Cindy.
Oh, she's very humble.
She's extremely humble, and she doesn't, I don't think she gets enough credit for everything she does, because this all exists because of her drive, and she's very, very passionate, and they even do initiatives. So that one of their big initiatives that they do, they have 2 big ones going on right now. And one of them is with companion animals. So this isn't service dogs or therapy dogs. They're just a dog or cat you go to the shelter and get. If a veteran wants a companion dog, they can go to a shelter, find the dog or cat or whatever it is they want, and they can actually put an application into Coming Home Well and say, I would like this animal. Coming Home Well will actually pay for it.
It's amazing.
And that's really awesome. And then the newest one they're doing is on TBIs and more research into CTE, which is, I'm blanking out on the acronym, but essentially, if you guys all saw the movie with Will Smith that I cannot remember the name of, but it was about the football players that essentially were going crazy.
Concussion. It's the lingering effects of concussions.
Yes, it is the lingering effects of concussions. And I can't remember any of it to save my life, but it's CTE. And they are actually doing research, and they've linked up, Coming Home Well is linked up with people that are doing research on this and asking people to donate their brains to science. So, and then they can study this, like veterans and whatnot.
They may want to look at mine and figure out why it was so underutilized.
Close the top back on it.
They'd be like, wow, this one... this one wasn't used at all.
Just bury this one. It's fine.
On the you're talking about the companion animals. I've got a 7-year-old Labrador.
Yes, you do.
I'm pretty convinced she thinks this is her that runs the home and secures all the furnishings and food, and that I'm her companion. I assign to her. And so somehow this whole script is flipped.
She's a good dog. We love her.
Well, this is good, Donna. I love it. I love where we're heading. I hope the listeners enjoy, this aspect of it too, and can't harp it enough. Love hearing from them. So,
well, I'm gonna let you wind it down. What's your quote? I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Put on the spot today. I don't know. Off the cuff, can I come up with a quote? Look both ways before crossing the street. Is that a quote?
That's a mother's advice.
Is that true? I don't know. Look, I think to everybody, you know what Donna and I want for each and every one of you is just that you recognize you hold a key, and the key may not be to your door. It may be a key you hold to someone else's door, and there are people out there that need human connection.
Yes.
That we're all battling something to greater or lesser degrees, and you can make a tremendous difference in the life of someone else by simply being kind.
Yep.
And willingness to listen. It could just be, let's go grab coffee together. Maybe you've got somebody that's a neighbor that is walled off, and you know that about them, but they're familiar with you, friendly. There's a friendly relationship there, and maybe you're running out to get groceries, and all you do is say, "Hey, I'm heading out. Is there something I can get for you?" Whether an elderly person or not, I don't know. But so it's not a quote. It's more of a feeling of, we can't lose our connectedness, and social media is a barrier to that. I honestly believe, as much as it's nice to be able to wish a friend from 20 years ago happy birthday online, there's nothing like getting together in space with one another. And
I think I'll give you a Donna quote.
Okay,
I think the Donna quote would be that sometimes you got to lend your resiliency while others are building theirs.
That's going to end up in a future book.
There you go, right?
Yeah, I like it.
And I agree. You never know. And this just popped in my head. This happened to me yesterday. I came home, and this week's been rough for me. It's just been a very odd week, and a lot of me kind of doing up and down with the business, and what am I doing, and am I doing it right, and all kinds of stuff that happens when you're starting a business. And I came home, and there is a box at my door. Okay, and I grab it, and I look, and it was from somebody that I used to work with years ago.
That's fun.
And I open it up, and it is a tall teacup with a strainer and a container of chai, which is my favorite all-time tea, and I'm a huge tea drinker, right? And I was like, oh my God. And then there was a note inside of it, and it was the kindest note.
That's nice.
And it was, thank you for being my friend, my mentor. If the phone ring, I call you, I know you're going to answer.
That's nice.
When I ask for advice, you give it. When I need a pick me up, you're there. It was like my head was so fat afterwards. I was like, my Lord, did it pick me up to the door?
But it feels good, right? To have somebody appreciate it.
I'll tell you, it helped me, because I was like, wow. And I responded to her, and I said, your timing couldn't have been more perfect. Didn't matter why. It's just that I really needed a pick me up that day, nice. And she was funny because she didn't understand what I meant when I said that. I go, I really needed a pick me up. She's like, oh, have you been sleepy? And I'm like, no.
Not what I meant. Yeah.
But she was very humble in it, so there you go, right? Like, somebody did that for me, and it really did just help me after a rough week. And so when you are out there, you don't know when you're lending that resiliency to somebody, and you don't know that people maybe have been resilient for so long that they just need somebody to be kind and say, hey, we got you.
That's exactly right. Fantastic.
There you go.
No, it's fun.
All right.
Really good. Well, listen, everybody, on behalf of our parent podcast team, Coming Home Well, and then this podcast, Beyond the Frontline, and my co-host Donna Hoffmeyer. Look, we love being in this time and space with you. We hope this finds each and every one of you well. We do encourage you to like, follow, share, comment, reach out to us. But as always, take care of yourself, and go out and do great things.
Have a great week.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Frontline, a podcast of Coming Home Well. Join us every other Wednesday. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. Follow us on Instagram at ComingHomeWell_BTS, or on Twitter at ComingHomeWell. Thanks again. And until all are home and all are well.